Hey, want to listen to some tunes?
I actually didn't expect to have as much fun as I did in Atomic Heart. For Mundfish's first ever official release, I would say that this studio has some pretty good potential for the future. If I were to describe this game, I would describe Atomic Heart as BioShock in Soviet Russia, but worse. Hear me out, I'm not saying that this is a bad game. In fact, I would say that Atomic Heart by all metrics is a good game. It's not a great game, but if you wanted to sit down, shoot some robots, and have some fun, then you might find some enjoyment here. But I really wanted to love this game because it had everything set up for it to be amazing. It had good combat, a cool setting, and an interesting foundation for a story. But unfortunately, Atomic Heart doesn't execute most of these things to the fullest potential, and it just ends up being a worse version of similar games that came before it. There were so many literal annoyances and questionable decisions that just piled on each other to ultimately sour my experience of this game. There was also a bit of controversy before this game came out about this game being Russian propaganda and that sending my personal info to the Russian government. And yeah, on the surface level it does look like that, the Russian propaganda thing. I don't know about the sending my info thing. Hopefully Putin doesn't steal my credit card number. Anyway, this game isn't really propaganda. Like, yeah, you're fighting for the Soviet Union and communism stuff, but it kind of comes with the setting, and it doesn't really push those ideals down our throats, thankfully. So I'm not going to talk about the politics around this game and just review this game based on its own merits. First, I want to talk about what this game does right. Atomic Heart's setting is actually really interesting. It takes place in an alternate reality timeline where the USSR has gone through a technological revolution where they've developed robots so advanced to the point where people don't have to do manual labor. And these robots are all connected to one hive mind neural network called the Collective. Right from the start of this game, you're thrust into this amazing looking world with so much going on, and it just feels so alive. It's interesting because we don't really have a game where we explore an alternate reality post-World War II era in Russia, and the developers did a really good job at making this reimagining of their world feel authentic and believable with their incredible art direction and robot designs. Not to mention that this game got so much traction because of the robot mommies. Yes! Yes! Come to Papa! The developers knew what they were doing when they made these two characters, and everybody just ate it up like it was the Last Supper. What Atomic Heart also does really well is combat. Combat feels really satisfying and enjoyable. The level of customization in this game feels amazing, and you can pretty much tailor your gameplay the way you like it. You get a variety of melee weapons, guns, and abilities to use, all with their own unique properties. And you can use whatever weapon you want to match your kind of playstyle. For example, I played through the entire game with a shotgun and one-handed axe. There's also this upgrade system for your abilities that can make them do a variety of cool things like mass telekinesis slam or a freeze blast. But what makes this combat really satisfying is the level of feedback you just get from each hit. Whenever you swing your melee weapon or shoot a bullet at an enemy and it makes contact with them, there's this clear visual feedback of your hit with bits and pieces of your enemy flying off of them. And whenever you cleave a robot into or you blast the robot bits off, it's just chef's kiss. And there's such a huge variety of enemies that all do their unique thing, so combat will never get old or tiring. That doesn't mean it's perfect though. There are some problems I have with the combat. One problem that was kinda annoying was that some of the enemies are really bullet spongy, and the bosses are especially horrible with this. Like, they'll just eat up all your bullets. My fully upgraded shotgun is looking like a pea shooter to these bosses. And in this game where ammo is limited, you can't afford to spend all of your bullets on one boss. So I just gave up on trying to use my guns and instead resorted to just using melee weapons to kill these bosses. Weirdly enough, I had much better results using my one-handed axe to kill bosses because the melee attack does way more damage than bullets do. Another problem that I had was the infinitely spawning enemies in the open world. After a couple hours of doing the tutorial, the game will open up to you and give you the ability to explore the open world. And it would be fun if I could explore the game normally. But the thing is, there's a crap load of cameras around, and if you get detected by any of these, they'll call on an infinite amount of reinforcements that just keep coming, and it just becomes so tiresome to deal with. The game tells you that you're supposed to stealth past these cameras, but the stealth in this game isn't that good, and with the amount of cameras and robots around, it's nearly impossible to slip by unnoticed. If you do get noticed and decide to stick around and fight, you'll quickly find out that there's little reward in killing these guys and you're just wasting your bullets. After I realized this, I just started to run past everything and beelined it to the next objective marker because it just wasn't worth the headache. And one small nitpick that I had with the gameplay was that the movement just feels so clunky. This game doesn't have a sprint button, and instead you automatically move faster when you walk forward, but slower when you strafe. This just feels really weird to play because it feels like you move slower than molasses walking backwards, and enemies are zipping around you running faster than Flash with Speed Force on. There is a movement speed upgrade you can get pretty early on that's pretty much essential if you want to have a decent time playing this game. There's also no block button for some reason and no melee button with a gun, and it's really annoying that I have to switch my gun to my axe in order to just do a melee hit. Now the biggest problem I had with this game by far was the story. The writing in it is absolutely awful, and I'm kind of disappointed because this game had an interesting premise for a story, but they completely dropped the ball on the execution of it. The story in Atomic Heart is that it takes place in an alternate timeline Russia where they've undergone a technological breakthrough which allowed them to develop a neural network called the Collective that lets users control robots en masse. You play as Major P3, a World War II veteran that was given an experimental talking glove named Charles. P3 has been invited to Facility 3826 where they are developing a Collective 2.0 that lets people control robots using their minds. Once P3 arrives at Facility 3826, the robots all of a sudden start going haywire and are attacking people. Now you as Agent P3 must track down the culprit responsible for turning all the robots and people and put a stop to it. On the surface level, this is a pretty decent setup for a semi-enjoyable story, but the writing and dialogue was so bad that it killed all interest that I had with it. This story had so much potential to be good, but they blew it, and for what, a couple of cringe one-liners and sex references?
Crispy critters. Crispy critters. Crispy critters. Crispy critter? Crispy critters. Crispy critters!
And the ending has easily got to be one of the worst endings I've experienced in a while. After the final boss fight, when everything comes to its conclusion, the completely predictable plot twist happens and undoes all of the work we've done in the past 15 hours or so in the story, and then it just ends. It could be that the developers were sequel baiting, but this is not how you create intrigue for a sequel. It did quite the opposite actually, and just left a sour taste in my mouth. Not only is the story predictable with no payoff, the characters are all forgettable, and the main character P3 is completely obnoxious and a massive douche to everyone around him. Like the entire game, he's either complaining about something or being an asshole to someone.
Thank you for coming to my aid. Not having the key felt like I was missing a limb. One moment, please.
Did we fix her or break her?
The Tereshkova is a state-of-the-art model with a self-repairing system. A famous actress and cosmonaut contributed to its creation.
I don't give two wet farts.
The devs seem to have thought that making him swear every other sentence and getting angry at completely innocent people makes him relatable or funny, but it doesn't. It just makes me want to play this game on mute. Atomic Heart also seems to have a problem with clashing tonalities within the story and dialogue. It seems like this game is trying to tell an intricate, serious story with tons of exposition, but then it also has stuff like this.
I am here to help you upgrade your red-hot pocket rockets. And believe me, handsome, you can upgrade whatever tickles your fancy. I'll service you however you want. Got a sword? A massive sword? Thrust it deep into my socket so I can make it sturdier and sharper. Deeper? Again? Oh, yes, honey, more, yes.
And it just rips me out of the immersion I had for this game. It seems like on one hand, this game's story is trying to be something that you're supposed to take seriously, but on the other hand, it's trying to be a funny, laid-back game where none of the characters take the story too seriously and are there for comedic purposes. Unfortunately, this game doesn't do either exceptionally well, and what we end up with is an amalgamation of the two parts that just don't mesh well together and ultimately just pull me out my immersion. I feel like Atomic Heart would have been much more enjoyable if they took the Borderlands approach to storytelling where they have a semi-serious story, but they lean more into the wackiness and absurdity of the characters.